Factorio is a game that perfectly encapsulates the human condition, and I know that sounds like an audacious claim to make, but if you give me a few minutes, I'd love to explain. You see, Factorio is a game where you're crashed on planets surrounded by enemies, and have to send a satellite into orbit, presumably to call for help. The catch is, you start with damn near nothing. The game quickly becomes more complicated as you play. Originally, you are just trying to make some iron plates by melting down some iron ore, and later on, you end up having to combine iron plates with copper wiring, with plastics, with sulfuric acid, just to make one of the components to need to be able to make another component that you'll then need to make into another component that you'll then process into a spaceship. And you have to do all of this while constantly being under attack from the insects that were on the planet long before you were. In Factorio, you're forced to manage your resources, your time, and to find strategies to expand your factory so you can manufacture everything you need to leave this godforsaken planet. And it forces you to dig in and to refuse to let anyone penetrate your walls, or to violently expand, eradicating all threats around you. And this is much like real life. We all start with next to nothing, depending on who you are. Family, birthing rights, maybe you're royalty, maybe you're rich, maybe you're a peasant, maybe you're poor. But in the game, maybe you spawn next to some uranium or oil, or maybe none of those for miles and miles around. And just like in the game, in life we come under siege by things that want to take us down, that want to halt our progress. And these things may be small inconveniences rather than full-scale attacks, but we still have to deal with them because it still will eventually chip away at your mind and drag you down to a place you don't want to be. These could be anything from rent going up, medical bills, emotional trauma, relationships breaking down, and regardless of what you have going on, they're problems that you need to face, and you can't really ignore them, because if you ignore them, it'll either cause you to be cold and alone, or suicidal at worst. So you have to be proactive, seizing every opportunity to expand your horizon, not letting a single inch fall without a fight. And this is very similar to how you have to play the game. In the real world, everything goes from benign and simple to overwhelmingly complex, just like in the game. I mean, for God's sakes, do you remember when you were 7? I remember I was in the first grade going to my class. I was being taught by a gentleman, lovely gentleman. I'm not going to dox him here. But getting to that class, being able to do the little 1+5s and the ABCs was paramount to my success. And when I got home, I did literally nothing but on occasion do the homework, because most of the time I did it in class while waiting for the bus. And after I had done that, if there was any left over, I would just sit down and play with some Legos, and everything was very simple. And now I've got a job that requires me to do a lot more than sing my ABCs. It's a lot more taxing physically, it's a lot more taxing mentally, there's a lot more things to do, there's a lot more precision in what I do. And that's not even talking about anything that I do at home. I mean, now I've graduated from Legos to big boy Legos in the form of sandbox games like Minecraft or Space Engineers, or hell, even the game we're talking about right now, Factorio. And that revelation, when I had it a few months ago, taught me that no matter how overwhelming a challenge, no matter how drastic an obstacle or a goal might appear, it's not as bad or as difficult as it seems, because when you break everything down to its fundamentals, there's nothing that can stop you. Because let's be entirely fair, building a rocket ship is a daunting task. But when you break it down to, I'm going to make some iron plates, I'm going to make some basic circuits, I'm going to make some advanced circuits, I'm going to make some lights, I'm going to make some power, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. it makes it bearable. And that same thing can be said about real life. And in fact, an example of that from my life is gonna go back a couple months to, I believe, March, when I first started getting into digital art, animation, and a little bit of 3D modeling, as far as organic stuff, non-machine stuff. For a very long time, pretty much since I was like 12 years old to, again, about a couple months ago, I thought it would be completely impossible for me to do anything in the field and do something that's good. Then I bought my iPad, which I love, and I was suddenly able to do digital art. Doors swung open for me, and once I started, it was clear that even the most intricate things that I could do all starts with one base thing. Sounds awfully familiar, doesn't it? Sounds almost like to build a spaceship, you have to get a couple iron plates, and then you have to do something else, and then you have to add a little color, and then you have to use a Gaussian blur, and then you have to go on and on. It's no secret that what I make, both for, videos, Factories, and Factorio, the art that I make, it's not the best in the world, and that's okay. But the thing that makes me smile is that at the end of the day, if you were to ask my 20-year-old self, which is about 3 years ago, or especially if you were to ask my 16-year-old self, if I would ever be able to do the types of things I have done or am continuing to do in terms of making videos, doing digital art, or anything else major that I'm doing right now, I would have likely told you no on every single front. If I had shown my 16-year-old self this art and told him that I made that, my 16-year-old self would have called you a fucking liar. But I did it. And I did it last week, as a matter of fact. And this revelation all started from a silly little game where I just place belts down and make sure I have enough ore to feed my furnaces.